I'ma rule the world, yeah, yeah. I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. 해가 지고 뜰 때까지 I'm up, yeah.
Tonight, we're revisiting a crucial issue we've discussed before that's a silent crisis across the nation. Canada's birth rate has been on the decline for the last 75 years. The decline threatens our economy with labor shortages, increases our need for government subsidies, and jeopardizes the future of pensions and retirement for our aging population. We may already be feeling the effects, and the challenges will only increase if not solved. Tonight, we're sitting down to discuss the reasons Canadians aren't having children and if there's anything we can do about it. Welcome to My Generation. We're joined by Abby, Marina, and Devon. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Okay, so Marina, I want to start with you. You've done something that most people have kind of decided to focus on in recent years, which is focus on career over the last few years. Why did you go about making that decision? Was it intentional, unintentional? Take me through that process.
I think, naturally, I always had that entrepreneurship mindset inside of me. But I was raised in a traditional Greek family where my mother was a homemaker. She stayed at home.
How old were they when they had their first kid?
So they were 20. My mom was 23 when she had me.
Really? So pretty young.
Yeah. And that's actually what you look at. If you look at the stats in the 70s, most people were having kids at around 23, whereas now most people are having kids at around 29 and a half.
Abby, you're a little bit younger and you decided to go the opposite way. What kind of influenced that view for you? Why did you decide to have kids?
Well, I always wanted kids. My parents raised me to believe that having kids was a blessing, and there's no your life begins when you have
kids.
Kids.
So you were just raised that way. How old were your parents when they had kids?
My mom was 20 and my dad was 22.
And did that influence you in having kids earlier as well?
Definitely a little bit. I remember asking my dad if he regretted having kids young, and he just looked at me and said, I didn't have kids young.
Really?
Like,
oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay, so Devon, you're a little bit more on Marina's route here. You've taken the entrepreneurship route. You've been running your own business. You've been a trainer for quite some time. Why did you go about deciding that route rather than saying, I want to have kids when I'm 21, 22 years old?
It's probably just like a timing thing for me. So I would prefer to have kids with someone I've been with for a while, who I've established a relationship with, some trust with. And another reason why would be because financially, if I'm not steady in my job, right, or say I don't have somewhere to raise a child in a good environment, then I would rather wait a little bit longer if I'm able to do that.
Well, it definitely makes it the cost of living thing. We'll get into that in segment 3. It totally makes it more challenging. One of the questions I had though was the idea that parenthood in some way holds us back. Was that ever a thought? Abby, did that ever cross your mind when you had your first kid that, parenthood's going to hold me back in the things I want to do?
No, I mean, sometimes you have to wait a little longer, but I think it drives you to do better because you want to be a good role model. You want to make a good life for your children. Mm-hmm. And I think it pushed my husband and I to try harder, to do more.
Be more productive.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Marina, what do you think changed in our culture over time? Because it's funny, both of you said that your parents had kids early 20s, and Marina, you haven't had kids yet. Now, what do you think changed? And that's a lot of people. We're really delaying. Gen Z and millennials are really delaying having kids. Why? What's changed in our culture?
I think social media has a really big influence on it, and I do believe that the feminist act had a big play on it. We have women who are focused on their careers and getting education, and that doesn't really give us that much time to actually focus on finding a suitable partner.
So is career king in today's society?
I think career is king, but I also think women aren't able to find men anymore that are capable of playing the role of a man.
Do you think, people talk about gender roles a lot in today's society and how that, that has shifted a lot, and a lot of people would agree with that. Has that played a significant role, Dev, from a guy's perspective? Marina just said that. Are you seeing gender roles change? How is that affecting people having kids?
I find gender roles may have changed slightly. Obviously, maybe coming back to a long time ago, 50, 60 plus years ago, women were staying at home, taking care of the kids. Okay, the man's going to go to work. But I also find too is I find people learn from their parents, learn from their mistakes. They say, they talk about if they've had multiple weddings or divorces before, or if you have half siblings or full siblings, you're
Do you think, some people think it's individualistic thinking to think that you choose not to have kids? We talk about parenthood being so sacrificial. Is that still a factor today?
Well, I find too, even having a kid with someone you want to have a kid with.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people who are having kids, maybe not even on purpose, and then just having the kid anyways.
I've got to cut you off there. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
I'ma rule the world, yeah. I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah.
Have you heard of the term population collapse?
Sounds like maybe we don't have more kids like it used to be, like
Right.
early times. So
Why do you think they're not having kids?
Because having kids is really, really expensive.
Just the cost of living, the food, rent, mortgages.
And
Is that the only reason?
It's just getting worse.
No.
No, but it has something to do with it.
It's also like a responsibility thing too. Like I feel like I'm not ready to have kids anytime soon personally.
I think everyone's just doing everything later also. Like a lot of kids aren't getting married till they're 30, and then there's not as much time to have kids.
Cultural beliefs and prices for sure.
Cultural beliefs plays a big one. Okay, what do you think?
Costs and just like how society is now, like social media and all that, that's hard to maintain a relationship.
People give up on relationships very easily. They don't want to go through hardships anymore.
If you had better relationships, do you think you'd actually have kids, even if it was expensive?
Then you could work together to make money. Money can be solved, right? If there's stability and a good foundation in a relationship, money can be solved.
Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker, I'm sure you've heard, recently spoke at a college about traditional family values, sparking backlash and prompting the NFL to state that his views do not represent the organization. Women are now posting their stories on TikTok saying, "We are not the same." This controversy underscores a societal trend where people avoid taking sides on personal decisions like starting a family or choosing a career because of the backlash that they may face. So one of my first questions is it offensive to encourage childbirth in today's society? Is it? Like Harrison came out and said, you know, we want to encourage, or we feel that I feel that it's very empowering for women to have children. Abby, why don't you speak on that really quick?
Yeah, I mean, I think that having children, it gives you a new sense of value, like you don't really get in the workplace. Like if you're owning your own business, you know, you might get like a similar, because like your employees might feel like your children. But if you're just an employee, you're just a number, you're not bringing really any value.
It's just funny because, like, if we look at it from like a biblical standpoint here, Genesis verse 1-8 says, "Be fruitful and increase in population." And it's funny how now they're saying that we have, like, it's offensive to say increase in population, bear a child, when like the Bible taught us that it was actually a gift from God.
But we find a lot of women, and I'm, Dev, from your perspective, like we find a lot of women are taking offense to, hey, because of the movement, the feminist movement from back then, as well as like they want to feel like career can be their thing too. Dev, Marina, like your thoughts on that?
I think there can be a healthy balance in both, but I think that it is a career in itself, being able to raise your child and not have a stranger raise your child.
Do you think men see it that way?
Honestly, like my opinion would be like, why does it matter what anyone else thinks? Like it's your own life, do whatever you want. Like who cares what other people think? So
when people say, and we ended segment 1 off of this, like when people say, you know, well, you haven't had a child yet, you know, you're almost 30 years old, you're still a trainer, but you haven't had a kid, that's individualistic thinking. How are you going to respond to that?
like that's your opinion. I honestly don't even care.
I think it's more selfish to bring a kid into this world with somebody that you're probably going to end up divorced with, and then that child is going to end up in therapy because they literally are coming from a broken family.
But that's also why I think it's important for you to find somebody who shares the same values as you. Like you mentioned the Bible. If you find a godly man who wants to build a life, like the church is the best place to find a man that you can build a life with.
So and this kind of gets into relationship dynamics a little bit. Is it harder to find somebody that you can have kids with, or?
Yeah, because everyone is literally a click of a button and you literally can get whatever you want. It's a dopamine rush that everyone is trying to chase right now.
But I also think it's a little bit challenging too, because career is something that is more individualistic in some ways. And so when we look at somebody who focuses on career, if you have two people together who are focused on different careers, a child is the thing that brings them together. And wanting to have a child is the thing that brings them together. If we don't have that,
exactly, but
it
that's
poses
why
a challenge, no?
Getting rid of the nuclear family.
So, okay, throwing to religion, because you guys brought this up. Dev, what are your thoughts? Like, do you think religion actually plays a role in having children?
It does in a sense for the people who believe in certain religions that it correlates to, but I mean, If you're not religious at all, then I feel like that doesn't really partake in any kind of like how it would skew your opinion on that.
So it's just whenever you feel like having a child,
Yeah.
if you're non-religious.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's where the problem stems from, is a lot of people nowadays are not religious, and there is no there's no force to actually want to have children. So when I've connected with my faith the most in the last 2 years, and in the last 2 years, I'm feeling that little clock inside of me where it's like, oh, I want a family. Like, I want to raise a family in like a nice traditional household the way I was raised. But prior to that, maybe my faith wasn't as strong.
We'll get back to it. We'll be right back. I want to ask Dev and Abby the same question, so stay tuned. As birth rates continue to decline, we're facing potential economic and social challenges that could reshape our future. Now, without a steady birth rate, Canada risks experiencing labor shortages, strained social services, and an aging population that outnumbers the young. These trends not only threaten economic stability, but also affect community support systems and our cultural continuity. So, guys, I'm just curious, we talk a lot about cost of living, and that's something that I really want to speak on here, because that's a big reason why, at least on the streeters, we saw people didn't want to have kids. Is a cost of living a factor for you choosing not to have a child now, Dev?
Absolutely. Like, I'm just starting a business now, and I just bought a house. So like, if I wanted to have a kid right now, it'd probably be very difficult right now.
Tight?
Pretty much. But
do you consider yourself making a decent living?
Yeah.
Okay. And Rena?
Yeah, I think I'm also starting my second business, but I mean, if it happened, I know that I would be able to adapt to it and make it work the way I have everything in my life.
And you consider yourself making a decent living?
Yeah.
Okay. So like, when you were, say, 25, let's say, did you ever think, oh my God, I could never have a child right now. I'm broke. I couldn't afford it.
I think everyone has that fear, but I think there's no right time to have a child. I think when it happens, and you adapt to it. Like, we're human. We adapt to everything, right? Like, you were saying, the point that you were saying.
Yeah, because I definitely wasn't in a position to have a baby, but like, when I was pregnant, my husband got full-time. Like, he was only part-time working, and then he got full-time, and everything kind of fell together nicely. And even if it didn't, you find a way to make it work.
No, but it's fair. I mean, you do find a way to make it work. But at the same time, I've heard the saying too, and Dev, you've kind of said this, is, well, why am I going to put a child into this world if I can't give them the life that they want?
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
Absolutely. So
all the child wants is just love. That's the number one thing. Like, sure, things are nice, but
yeah.
What if you're not going to be able to give that love, though? So say you have to work like 100-hour work weeks, just be able to afford to even have like baby formula, diapers, etc. Say you have a child with somebody, and then man or woman, one of the partners moves away or says like, no, I'm not doing this, and now you're a single parent, and still you're not getting the help that you need.
Well, that's why there's a court system where you can get child support and get support from them.
I mean, okay, so no, but that's a fair point. Like, relationship dynamics have a major play on it.
But what if we die tomorrow? Like, that's the question, right? Like, what if? But like, if you're working hard and you've built a future and like you're successful, I feel like if you have a child, it's not going to stop you. It might just like push you to even be more successful.
Mm-hmm. So I actually was speaking to a few people before this episode, and I had asked them, and they're very career focused. And I had said, how come you don't have children? And the answers that they were giving me were somewhat similar. I felt like I couldn't give them the love that child would want. Is that not a valid response to say, I don't want to have a child, at least right now, or I don't want to have a child ever because I don't think I can give that?
Well, I think the transformation you go through as a new parent with a newborn, the amount of love that just you start to feel, like it's like you can't even really describe it. Like, that's
what I've heard.
A little human that completely depends on you and its whole world. Like, a newborn baby can't even tell the difference between you and them.
I get it from the perspective of, you don't know if you're going to be able to have the time and everything, because even it's like having a dog essentially, right? Like, you don't have time to walk it 3 times a day, 4 times a day, feed it. But at the end of the day, if you find somebody that you love, then...
What was your view when you didn't want to have kids?
My view is that I never met a man that I felt safe enough to have a child with.
Okay. And from a man's view, I'm curious, what was your view when you didn't want to have kids? Did it have anything to do with relationships with women, how women are?
It had more to do with like if I will like that person enough. Like, do I want to raise a kid with this other partner of mine?
Were you dating them?
Yes or no. Like exactly. So if I'm not dating them,
why are you
then
dating somebody if you have no intention of having a child with them? And I think that's the problem that we're having with men these days is that they want to just date a girl because they look good.
But kids still want to live their life.
I get that.
Right? So like get experience, go out, date this person, date that person.
But why date somebody and have a relationship with somebody? Because women, they don't like to just like give up their bodies and like get into relationships just to get into relationships. But these guys, what happens is, especially in now today's society, is they're dating these women. And then it's like, yeah, you know what? Now I'm going to go to the next person. And it's like, we're dating you because we're looking for marriage. We want to like create offspring.
I think that's like more in like maybe your instance, because I've met like a lot of females. I train a lot of females, and they're not all like that. They're like, I don't date men to marry them. I just want to see what I like, experience it. Some might be on the quiet, especially on the twice.
We got to leave it there. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Can we really encourage parenthood without giving up the progress we've made in our careers and personal freedoms? Is there a way to find that sweet spot, or does it even exist? As we face the reality of declining birth rates and an aging population, we need to explore all options, even if it questions whether or not we need a cultural shift in Canada. One of the things that we were all talking about off camera was not just a cultural shift, but a relationship shift in the way that we view relationships. Abby, why don't you speak on your own personal experience and how your relationships have adjusted to today's culture, but how it also differs?
I mean, my husband and I, we got pregnant very early on, and that was, unexpected, of course. But you just, when you have that commitment to work with each other, you find a way, you change for each other. That's part of what loving someone is you can't be stuck with who you are, because if you're becoming into a partnership, you're becoming one. You have to change yourself and adapt to make
so
that
for you, it was
person-
very early on, but for you, like, you dated somebody for 3 years, you dated somebody for 4. You guys never made the decision to move any further. At what point?
Yeah, so I think in my situation, when a person doesn't want to like grow up and it becomes more of like a me, I mentality, then that's when the selfishness comes into play. So it's not selfish to not want kids.
Does career influence that? Does being too focused on career influence that in today's society?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, if one partner is wanting to do one thing, one partner is wanting to just go sit on the couch and chill. Like, do you want to have a kid with somebody like that? Probably not.
Okay. So, why date somebody for 4 years and then you realize, okay, this isn't the one. I don't want to have a kid with this one. Is that something that goes through your head when you're dating somebody, or is it like
I'm big on like not wasting time, because time's very precious. Times you can't buy. So like if you're gonna be with somebody, and then I've had people even ask me you've been with this girl a long time. Like, oh, do you see this like being the one? Like, do you see marrying her? And I'm like, honestly, no. Like, there's a lot of like issues with like, communication.
But you kept it. You prolonged it.
And that's
no, honestly, somebody asked me this, and then 3 months later, I actually broke it off.
Wow, good for you. I salute you for doing that, at least, because I think nowadays a lot of guys just stay with women and they prolong it. They waste the woman's time, and then they jump to the next thing. And, I just think right now in society, guys are more interested in popping bottles, traveling, going from girl to girl, like the fancy.
Is that now, like, Abby, from your experience, you have a very different experience from that. I'm curious, how has that changed for you?
I mean, my husband was kind of a homebody, so I didn't really have that experience. I mean, he like...
Did you have like a stronger vetting process when finding somebody? Was it like, I want to have a child with this person, and you knew that within the first 2 weeks of meeting them or the third date?
Well, I believe that you can make any relationship work.
I do too.
I don't agree.
I just think that both
So you're
people
gonna say
have
if
to be
someone cheats on
committed.
you, you're gonna try to make that relationship work?
Absolutely not. No, I think that anything, infidelity, any form of abuse, substance abuse, even, like, I think those are like guidelines where you could say, you know what, I'm walking away from this. And even like in a religious standpoint, you can walk away from a marriage when that stuff happens in a relationship.
Well, I think the whole thing is that it's both people committed to each other, loving each other. If one person goes and cheats, they're clearly not committed.
Yeah.
Like you have to be willing to change.
So one of my questions in this, because I want to bring it back a little bit to career, cost of living as well, because that is a factor, and I know people watching will think that. Can we progress in a society today where parenthood is our primary focus?
I think it's a little bit hard because of our economy, and I think inflation has made it really hard. Like, you're going to the grocery store and a cucumber is literally $4 sometimes. So I think that's a little bit difficult.
Abby, how do you make it work?
I think that you have to make sacrifices. You have to give up certain things in your life and maybe live a simpler life, but that's still just as fulfilling.
No more eating for a week. Dev, we've got about 20 seconds left. Any closing thoughts from the guy's perspective? I know we've let the women talk for a bit. So
I just find that, like, it should be up to you at the end of the day whether you want to have a kid or not.
From centuries of subtle historical changes in family dynamics to Canada's current economic pressures, it's evident having children is influenced by a variety of factors. Defining your personal goals can be a challenge, and maybe having children is or isn't part of that. Either way, you're entitled to your decision, as we discussed, although I hope this conversation encouraged you to think of a different perspective that you may not have yet explored. But we want to hear from you, especially if you disagreed or feel we missed something important. Join the conversation at My Generation on all social media platforms. We'll end off with this. Do not simply accept what you are told. Challenge your thinking, engage in differences, and listen to new perspectives.
I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah, yeah. I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. 해가 지고 뜰 때까지 I'm up, yeah.